green transition will benefit more male population. True or false?
False.
False.
Women are proportionally represented in leadership roles within the renewable energy sector. True or false?
Not enough. False.
False for now.
Gender mainstreaming in green transition is a priority for the governments worldwide. True or false?
Should be not enough. False.
False for now.
Welcome to the 40th episode of the Skills Factory. Talks and ideas about skills from Europe and beyond. Green transition and green jobs. What role do women play in them? Energy sector, for instance, is historically male-dominated. But does this mean that the renewable energy sector has inherited the same gender imbalance? The green transition, without a doubt beneficial and necessary, comes with inevitable risks of increasing gender inequality. Today, we'll discuss how green can also become inclusive. Let me introduce our guest speakers for this episode. Gwenaelle Huet, Gender Ambassador for Skilling and Empowering Women in Energy Transition from Schneider Electric. Welcome to this podcast, Gwenaelle.
Thank you so much, Maria. Super happy to be here and to have this discussion with you on this super important topic.
And Romain Boitard from the European Training Foundation. Nice to have you with us.
Hey, it's great to be back.
So colleagues, what are specific sectors within green economy where women are particularly underrepresented?
Well, in particular, when you look at the figures, the energy sector is lacking a lot of women because in 2023, we had only 24% of the energy sector workforce that was coming from women. And in particular, when you look at girls, at school between 15 to 19 years old, there are very few that are, thinking of going that direction. So I think that we need really to change that and to make sure that we really educate on the ability to go in that direction because we make those jobs very attractive for women. So I have to say this is all about, the STEM industry, meaning the science, the technology, and all these kind of new areas for which there is a path, but we need to give opportunity for women to reveal what's inside and to go beyond some cultural norms that we may have, just to make sure that everyone has a role in that direction. So for us, it's all about programs on skills and training to make sure that the gaps are covered and everyone has a role in that direction.
Well, I can only agree to this, particularly if we consider the green sectors to be mostly STEM sectors or green technology. This is certainly an area that is growing very fast, and there's no reason why gender parity should not be achieved in these sectors. So I fully agree with everything that was just said by Gwen. We need to ensure that we take any necessary measures to make sure that these sectors are gender inclusive.
In 2022, just 7% of the energy sector startup founders were female, only 7%. And we know that in our domain on the energy sector, it's all about innovation. When you look at the green economy, you need to rethink the way we produce energy and the way we consume energy. So it's production, but it's also demand side, consumption. And on all those areas, there are new activities that are coming because it's all new generation of technologies, business models that are coming. And only 7% of these startups were female-based. It's just to give a sense that, it's about education, training, entrepreneurship. And for me, this is how we can cover exhaustively these areas so that we give a chance to anybody to contribute on these trends that are super emerging and that will last over time. 80% of greenhouse gas emissions are coming from the energy sector. So this transition will only accelerate in the coming years.
But do you think renewable sector is a bit inheriting the problem, the gender problem from the traditional energy sector? So is it a matter of inertia?
I think it's not only renewable energy, it's much broader. It's, for example, digitalization of energy. Because digital is an enabler to reduce your consumption on energy. And we can go back on that. But I have to say on all those areas, it's just a matter to overcome some cultural bias that we may have and making sure that at the end of the day, on all those energy fields, and they are numerous, as we were saying, we upskill and we empower the girls to go in that direction.
When do you think we need to start that empowerment? In school or in university?
It's a good question. I have to say that initially we were present a lot on universities, but that's not enough because it's already too late. So within Schneider, we have built a team that is dedicated to schools, how to go very early stage. I was saying to you between 15 to 17 years old, the girls there, we need to show that there is a path and to give attractiveness on the sectors that we were talking about. At the end of the day, it's as early as possible to make it happen. So for me, it's on both sides. Very early stage to engage into schools. And to do that, for example, in Schneider, we have volunteering, people from the company that are giving a testimony of what it is to work in the energy sector and to make it, attractive for the young generation and for young women to go in that direction. We need this kind of role model, but it's not just one kind of position. It's all the scope and the areas of activities that we can cover. So starting from school up to universities, and universities are also super important to make sure that we are preparing for the right skills of tomorrow. I was saying earlier that the energy domain is transforming radically. A few years back, it was very centralized power generation. Now it's very much decentralized. You're at home, you want to produce your energy, you want to consume your energy. You want to consume it effectively because you want to reduce your bill. Hence, from very large production towards much more decentralized production.
When it comes to the definition of those skills for the future, because we had already a podcast about that, Schneider is a big multinational company working in energy management. Do you work with educational institutions to tell them what skills do you need from the pupils, from the graduates, and how do you work with education?
First, we think that the role of a large company, Schneider Electric, is to have an impact. We say impact company, meaning that we want to go a step further than traditional just business. Hence, our commitment on education. So we have this youth impact program through learning with an objective that is under what we call the indicators that we have set for sustainability. It means that we communicate to the external world, to the market on a quarterly basis on two elements, financial results, but also extra financial results. On extra financial results, we have taken a commitment, which is to train 1 million people in energy management and industrial automation by 2025. So it's written in stone. And we are communicating on a quarterly basis, where do we stand in this achievement, in this target? And so far, we are around 644,000 youth that are trained in more than 45 countries. How to do that? Alone? Not alone. We are doing that with partners through the connection with the universities so that we can influence the content. One area that we are good at to influence is that we are doing vocational training. It's good to learn on paper with books. It's even better if you can exercise. Hence, we put at disposal some of our equipment, for example, so that people can train, the youth can train, and making sure that at the end of the day, after the education, they are already exercised on how to make it happen on the real world. So vocational training is one component. And again, the curriculum that we are influencing to reach this 1 million people target is evolving over time. Like a few years back, it was very much focused on energy management per se. Now it's also including what we call prosumer, meaning solar, batteries, how to optimize the overall system together. And then it's also Industry 4.0, the next level of industrial automation together with digitalization. So you see, over time, we have also to make it evolve because the market is evolving.
It's extraordinary, Romain, right? Because we speak a lot about the fact that educational institutions staying behind in terms of the skills. Meanwhile, a company like Schneider is really pushing for the skills needed for the green transition, right, Romain?
Absolutely. This is a fascinating to listen to. Schneider, in many ways, kind of embodies what the evidence shows, and certainly what ETF advocates for in its policy dialogue. The role of education clearly is one of the keys to women empowerment. But I would like to come back to one of the things that Gwen said in her intro, referring to the 7% only of women entrepreneur startups in this sector. So yeah, effectively that is way too low. But the renewable energy sector is one of the economic sectors that has the best gender parity. So there's still work to be done, of course, but clearly some right things have been done too. And it's important that we learn what was done properly, what was done to achieve this change. Because if you look at the energy sector 20 years ago, it was not the case. So what has happened in the recent decade so that this change was achieved? And the concept of ensuring engagement with educational institutions clearly is key. But it's not the only one, and I'm sure we'll get into that. But the gender norms or cultural norms are also a major hurdle to women inclusion in these STEM jobs, which are historically mostly male dominated. And so clearly getting a STEM program is the first step to getting into one of these jobs, but it's not the only one. So I'm really curious to look into what else has been done apart from making sure that women have enrolled into STEM programs. What happens when they graduate? How do they eventually get the jobs?
First, completely agree with everything. In terms of hurdles, absolutely right, cultural bias, etc. I think that what we see also on a day-to-day, because we have plenty of cases in different countries, and I can go back on that, the problems, the challenges are on two folds: access to education also, and access to finance. And I think this is important because what we want to achieve is to compensate from the hurdles that we are seeing on the ground. Hence, within Schneider, we have established also the foundation, which is the overall contribution that we're having, that is fully dedicated to empowering girls every stage, starting very early stage in schools, technical and vocational education, training, and then nurturing entrepreneurship, because we're accompanying those ladies. They're finishing school, they want to become entrepreneur, and then we are here to support. It's not easy. You're out of school, you know well electricity, for example, you know well renewable energy, but it's different to build a business plan. It's different to go outside world and start selling. Hence, we accompany on that front too. So for us, within the foundation, if from school until entrepreneurship, and we act as a financial support towards all this program to make it happen. I just wanted to reiterate that so that we have, across the whole lifetime up to the entrepreneurship program. Lastly, on your question, so how to find a job, I have to say that first, it's the entrepreneurship for the ones that want to go in that direction. And some of them, in many cases, they were very much hesitant because this is unexplored and completely different from what you learn at school. Hence, having dedicated entity for entrepreneurial is extremely important. And the second pillar is to make sure that they find a job because they are on the skills that is required in the country where they want to live. If we are talking about some countries in Africa where the topic is access to energy, if you are now talking about topics in urban areas, then it would be, for example, green cities, smart water. For example, we've been working, just to give different kind of example, we've been working in Africa in a project that is called Death First, which is supported by the European Commission. And it's called Women and Sustainable Energy Initiative to promote women's energy entrepreneurship in 10 countries, 9 of them being in Africa. So you see, this is very much dedicated to sustainable energy. in that case, in this particular program, it's all about inclusivity and empowerment, looking at the community itself in different countries, again, in Africa. So we are focused on skill training. We are focused on entrepreneurship. We are focused on job creation within the renewable energy sector, just to give you a sense of the impact that it is having. By offering training, by offering financial support, the program is set to train 7,000 women entrepreneurs. So it's quite significant, right? And it will allow 21,000 women to have access to renewable energy, to credits, and therefore entrepreneurship and employment that will be reset thanks to this initiative. We really want to be on the core and to have impact on life of people, life of girls, to really make a change so they can talk to others. They can give a sense to what's possible. We have also another program in Schneider Electric with the foundation, where we do what we call corporate citizenship champions community. It's a kind of women in STEM advisory program, Mexico, Brazil, Bolivia, Nigeria, Ivory Coast, and Kenya, South Africa, Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon. Looking at numbers of areas, geographies where we are present, and again, having some targets on development, documentation of learnings, career development, leadership. And again, it begins with technical high schools. So just to show, for example, on those ones, we are helping to develop your personal branding, to help develop a CV writing.
Stay tuned and please subscribe to this show on all the channels. In one of the previous episodes, we discussed that, for instance, North Africa has a massive potential in renewables, but both technology and human resources and skills are missing, right?
Yeah, interesting you bring this up. I mean, we've been talking about women inclusion from a one-way perspective, largely the human rights perspective. There's absolutely no reason why women should not get these jobs. In fact, there is some research that shows that overall women are actually better at STEM than boys. There's also the economic argument, the business case, the fact that we now have growing body of evidence demonstrating that the green transition is slowing down, at least in some of the EU member states, due to lack of a skilled workforce, including in sectors which are absolutely male-dominated. And this is the case certainly in North Africa, which, as you pointed out, has a humongous potential to develop and deploy renewable energies, not only for their own needs, but possibly, if I may, to trade with northern countries that have less sun. All these actions and measures that were explained by Gwen are certainly very useful to us. But there's other things that need to be done. In fact, all companies working in this field really should have internal targets on how many women work for them. There's also the issue of work-life balance, making sure that part-time options are possible or at least flexible. Maybe job sharing, that's something that keeps coming up, not to mention paid parental leave. All these things are necessary to make sure that women feel comfortable and look forward to developing their professional career in these sectors.
Coming back to STEM, Romain, I think last PISA revealed really some alarming trends in terms of mathematics, where so far, according to OECD PISA report, we're going down in terms of mathematic results. And yet we're here to speak about the inclusion of girls. Don't you find it contradictory?
Right, that's an interesting subject. The recent PISA result, as you pointed out, do show that overall globally there's been a decline in math proficiency. My take is COVID and the lockdowns, because the latest results actually correspond to surveys that were run right after most of the lockdowns, where, as we all know, many students were out of school for weeks, if not months, which certainly did not help building their math skills. So I'm counting on that, although with a little bit of caution, because there's still some analysis to be done.
When you said that this initiative that Schneider has to train 1 million people by 2025 is tomorrow. What's next for Schneider?
Well, we used to say that sustainability and all our commitment on the environmental and social pillar, because for us, sustainability is social too. It's like a marathon without a finish line. There is never ending story. So hence, yes, we have 2025, but we have already brainstorming on what's next. Exactly your question, because we want to stay ahead of the curve. For example, today, there is lots of questions on access to energy. There is lots of questions on access to water. Is it the next topic? Is the next topic the regeneration? It's never ending story, but the fight for women within those skills area is important. The question is how to adjust the skills so they are fit for purpose over the long term.
Is AI on the agenda?
Of course, I mentioned quite a big digitalization, and because it's the key enabler for the performance of the renewable energy, for example, or for energy efficiency. Digitalization is everywhere, digitalization of the grid. Hence, it's very much connected to AI. How to go a step further. This is already part of our offers at Schneider Electric, but then we need to train more and more people around that. It's AI, but tomorrow it's Gen AI.
I really enjoyed this conversation, and I really appreciate the perspective that Gwen brings in, because as we discuss the future, my take on that is that we're likely to realize quicker than we think that technology is not going to solve all our problems. The social dimension, our economic models, basically the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, are going to become increasingly important, because we're not going to fix all our problems through technology. We need to look at how we organize our societies. And I find that this discussion really illustrates that, in the sense that we are talking about green technology being deployed in countries that need it most, but through a very social approach, where we look at gender norms, where we look at employment perspectives, where we look at entrepreneurship, and basically changing the vision of the world within a company that deals with green technology. I'm really happy to listen to this.
Then I would like to thank both speakers for this episode. Gwenaelle, Avice, Huet, Gender Ambassador for Skilling and Empowering Women in Energy Transition. Thank you so much from Schneider. Thank you, Gwenaelle.
Thank you, Maria and Romain. It was a pleasure.
It was indeed super interesting conversation. Thanks a lot to Romain Boitard from the European Training Foundation.
Thank you for having me. It was a great conversation.
And thanks to all of you, our listeners, and stay tuned as there is much more to come. Goodbye.